Hello, I'm David Breeden. I'm the senior minister at First Unitarian Society of Minneapolis, and this is Coffee and Wisdom, where we look at some ideas of religion and humanism from the past and the present and where it might go in the future. And this week, we've been asking the question, what is religion anyway? I've already talked a little bit about the fact that many religious scholars nowadays talk about the category itself of religion as problematic because it does come out of a Christian domination idea of the world. What is religion? Asked the European settlers as they wandered around, and if they weren't Christian, well, they could take their land away because it was terra nullius, as the Pope had declared it, that is, empty land if Christians weren't inhabiting it. So religion is indeed a problematic category in general. Yesterday, I talked a little bit about the sociological idea of religion. That is, what does it do for people? What does it give its adherents who join into it? Today, I want to look at another aspect of religion that is right in our faces, but sometimes we don't think about it. And that is that religions usually encourage aesthetic experiences and celebrate and appeal to the senses. This is one of the churches that Bach played in, composed music for. There is his organ up there and quite a prominent place. And so the entire surroundings, the building itself, which is built to give the feeling of awe and majesty, the music that Bach composed, again, to communicate awe and majesty and joy, all combining to be a pure aesthetic experience of an altogether and all-encompassing kind of aesthetic experience. And indeed, there is Mr. Bach, Bach's statue outside the building, a little grayer on the outside than it is on the inside, as you see, is a container. The early 20th century theologian and philosopher Rudolf Otto was one of the early theorists on the idea of what religious feeling was. And he's still a go-to guy in theological schools and aesthetics classes about what religion does in terms of aesthetics. And he called it mysterium tremendum et fascinans, awe, wonder, fascination, and fear. His most famous way of phrasing this is to say that it is the numinous, and that is that religion creates a feeling of the numinous. Well, and then how does it do that? Well, through aesthetic means, through the use of arts. And we'll get back to that in just a moment. But he says, the feeling of it may at times come sweeping like a gentle tide, pervading the mind with a tranquil mood of deepest worship. And often you will see terms for the ocean or water in these descriptions of how the aesthetics of religions work. And of course, we know, and we've talked about this before in Coffee and Wisdom, that one of the ideals of meditation is this oceanic experience of being one with everything. It's the mystical experience that people try to get at. Well, but it doesn't have to be Christian, of course. This is an interior of a Shinto shrine in Kyoto, quite beautiful and interesting in the way that it's operating. Notice the flow there, getting at an oceanic feeling perhaps. This is a Buddhist temple in Kyoto. Notice the nice aesthetics, the bringing the outside in, which is one of the ideas for how Buddhism works in Japan. But it isn't just Buddhism, it isn't just Japan. This is the Kul Sarif Mosque in Kazan, Russia, a newer building, but you see the classic patterns. You've got the minarets going on, but this purity of color, the orbs going on, the whiteness, and then the contrasts of squares and circles that are going on. And this is just the center of it. It's a much larger complex, actually, but the aesthetic experience in creating that goes on. So music, poetry, sculpture, painting, dance, the aesthetics of religion. But it doesn't necessarily have to be about religion. This is a chapel on the University of Texas Austin campus, and it is Ellsworth Kelly's Atheist Chapel. Ellsworth Kelly was mostly a visual artist and sculptor. This is his last project in his life to build this Atheist Chapel. You'll see that there's no words out there, and actually symbols are not really existent either. You've got squares over here, and you've got a circle over here. And a rectangular door, and that's about it. It's communicating something very, very stark, but also aesthetically pleasing and beautiful in terms of its lines. So why would we call it a religious impulse? Isn't it merely a human impulse, this aesthetics? Because we do, don't we, equate often aesthetics and religions. Of course, in Europe, where the great cathedrals were built, but also in the smaller churches here in the U.S., even the little clapboard white wooden churches that are spread across rural areas in America. What is it about this that is religious? This is a photo of the interior of the chapel, the Atheist Chapel. You see how the light is coming in. And then he did produce some abstract expressionist paintings for the walls. But again, very, very stark black and white going on in here. And then the visual color. One of my favorites is the Rothko Chapel. Mark Rothko was an abstract expressionist, and he was commissioned to build a multi-faith chapel on Rice University campus in Houston. And what he came up with was very interesting indeed. It is in what's known as the brutalist style nowadays. That is, it's naked concrete walls, but it has this beautiful open dome at the top. And then he painted a series of abstract expressionist paintings. But as you see, they're all black. And that was Rothko's message, is that human beings project the idea of the religious onto the abstraction of the void or the nothingness. He too was an atheist. And so what people do is they go in and meditate here and watch the play of the natural light on these, which they're all painted exactly alike. But of course, you can't paint two paintings alike. And so they are very different if you look long enough at them. And this is the front of the Rothko Chapel. So on the other hand, and I do find this fascinating, when we talk about art museums, we use the word temple in a pejorative way. We say, wait a minute, art museums are so cold, they're so inaccessible to the average audience. They are these temples that people don't really want to enter. It's interesting the way that's turned around. But it is an expression of an idea that, again, aesthetics and religion are very much intertwined, sometimes for the good and sometimes for the bad. And yes, we see the Greek influence of the entrance to the museum here. So is it that categorizing something as religious calls up heightened awareness and reactions to symbols and metaphors, mysterium tremendum et fascinans? So just by calling it religious, are we then seeing that there has to be symbols, there have to be metaphors? I mean, you notice the way that I interpreted the abstract expressionist black paintings. I immediately went to the idea of Buddhism, of religion, to express how those work. Not just, it's canvas and black paint, right? So there is something about that, I think, that is a key to seeing how this aesthetic assumption remains in religious art. This is another interior shot of the Ellsworth Kelly Atheist Chapel. You'll notice there are the windows with the natural light coming in, and then their projection on the bare walls there. Very beautiful, very stark, and saying something about Ellsworth Kelly's idea of the meaning in the universe. something to think about for today, and we will continue looking at what is religion all about. Tomorrow, I'm going to turn it around a little bit and think of it from a consumer viewpoint. That is, what is religion in the marketplace? This evening at 7 p.m. Central Time, join us for Bibles and Beer, a humanist Bible study. This evening, we will be looking at the 3rd and 4th chapters of Genesis, in which, poor Adam and Eve are kicked out of the garden. We'll look a little bit about how Christian ideas of this permeate our readings, even though those ideas are actually not there in the text, in a very different way that the ancient Hebrews were looking. So that's 7 p.m. tonight, and you can subscribe to the Den of Conversation on YouTube. That is the place to see Bibles and Beer, and also when we rebroadcast the Coffee and Wisdoms later. And you can definitely help us out by going to firstunitarian.org/donate to keep the voice of Unitarian Universalist humanism strong. And you can also go to PayPal. Thanks a lot, and I'll see you tomorrow.